Hello there, and will you look at this? I do believe that we might be actually starting seconds early for once. What time is it? What time is it? It is just turned 7 o'clock according to my machine. There's a little bit of latency. Um, yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. A lot of people are kind of curious about this one. Oh, wait a minute. Just something very important needs to happen. Oh, there we are. Lovely. And marvelous. We're going back to our we're getting back to our rail natter roots for this one. Let's get my large face up because we're going to do quite a lot of this. Look how yellow it is in here. Crikey, it's a sunny one. We're going to have we're going to get back to our rail natter roots because I think a lot of this one is going to be face to face. Me chatting to you, lovely lot. Hello, you lovely lot. You lovely lot being all the viewers at home or wherever you happen to be, asking questions. So, and if you wish to, you can ask questions in any way you want to via Twitter even, and I'll try and keep on top of that. But to be honest, ideally what you want to do is at me into the comments. It's not in the comments, in the chat bar, the live chat that's going on, and I can catch your questions then. What I'll do is I'll stop a few times. By the way, I'm drinking I think this was in Sainsbury's. I don't know whose it is. It was quite pleasant. This is Hiver, nice little session IPA there. Just put that in front of my face. It's not going to focus, is it? Focus. Nope, never mind. So get yourself a nice drink. Get yourself comfy. Cheers, everyone. And Simon is in the office right now. Okay. We're gonna do this thing. Before we do this thing though, let's and before I start waffling it in, let me go back to removing my face from your screens and going and having a look at the latest coronavirus statistics in terms of transport ridership. Let's have a look. Also, this means I need to get my Wacom out. Wacom. What's going on? Well, what is going on? Well, firstly, this is the big zoomed out thing. And generally, you can see that rail is kind of generally continuing its upward trend. This is rail here, the blue line. If you're colorblind, it's the bottom one. The dotted bits here are all of the provisional like DFT projections that generally get it wrong, but vaguely point in the right direction. So you can see it's rising. Let's zoom in a bit though. So if we zoom in, we've also got the point at which measures were removed. Sadly, cycling, pretty much exactly as measures were removed. Weirdly, cycling has just gone down. Cycling is the green one here. The red one here is all road vehicles. There is a bit of a breakdown. It might be useful to break this down into like HGVs and stuff. Maybe I'll do that for the next episode and kind of break it in and have a proper look. But this has dropped. Sorry, this has just been continuing at 100%. It's over 100. It's greater than 100%. At the moment. Remember, these are relative, not absolute figures, so this is relative to pre-COVID times. Cycling, as we say, has dropped down. Bus services, the variation has widened, but it still looks like they're kind of sitting at around the 60% mark. And you can't quite see it there, but rail is it got up to about 58% of pre-COVID levels, and it's sort of stabilised a bit. But it is still steadily climbing. It's looking increasingly like whoever did name this 75% thing was kind of on the money, although when the 75% thing was described, it was before it was really before we understood exactly what the path out of lockdown was going to be. So I think it was expected that we'd be getting out of lockdown several months earlier. So this is anyway. So actually we have accelerated more rapidly, but anyway, it's pretty steady from the start of the year, 75%. So fair play. I think I poo-pooed that and said we'd get there quicker, but we've screwed things up too much as a country. So it's been slower, and government's made no effort to get people back onto public transport for mixed reasons. But now everything's open, you'd expect that that to be happening. In any case, that those are the numbers as they stand. You can sort of see it's a bit of a horrible clash of colours there, but anyway, there we go. People are saying because it's the summer holidays. No, this is relative. So. The only reason you'd have a drop like that is if it's in relation to 2019 numbers. So it perhaps be if there's an offset in summer holidays. But no, the cycling dropping is not relation. It's dropping in relation to last year's summer holidays as well. That's how the stats work. These are relative stats, not absolute stats. So a drop here does not mean It's not likely to be due to seasonal things. It's related to, it's in comparison to pre-COVID times. Anyway, that's enough of that. The news. Not much news to report this time around. I think the most interesting, there's actually 2 positive news stories, which is, the first one is that there is going to be a proper transport hierarchy, a highway hierarchy at last. It's going to be hopefully getting incorporated into the highway code on 1st of January 2022. This is what the transport hierarchy is about. The squishiest and most vulnerable road users are the ones that have the most priority. So as you get chunkier and have more power, you have to give way to everything else. So essentially, with the greatest power comes the greatest responsibility. Thanks, Spider-Man. Yes, so that is. So this is actually from a We Are Cycling UK sketch with the campaign to make this happen. It has happened. So fantastic work, Cycling UK and others who've got involved in that. But essentially, it means that cars will always have to give way to motorcycles to bicycles, and so it will be detailed, written down in the highway code. But you can look at the wording is available. Carlton Reid did a piece on it, for example. Go and have a look. But it's good. This is a positive thing. This is positive. Weirdly, one of the biggest opponents to HS2 in government at the moment happens also to be big on cycling and is pushing a lot of the some might argue draconian stuff going on. It's the only thing government is asserting itself on in a positive way, which is how much it's hitting local authorities for not enacting more cycling infrastructure and withholding funding for them not doing so. Actually a good news thing. Other good news. It's the A303 Stonehenge project that has been binned. Well, it's not been binned. It has not been binned. There's me doing a thumbs down. There we are. It's not actually been binned. What has happened is there was a judicial review. It was found that the process by which it was approved as a project was not acceptable. We remain confident our project is the best solution to the ongoing issues. Well, other people might beg to differ. So hopefully this will be the end of that, and this account will just go dormant, and then the whole thing will disappear. This is the first of the RIS2, the rail improvement strategy, road. Basically, the funding package for the next 5 years for road. It's the first of their big projects to tumble or to falter. So fingers crossed the momentum keeps up and these projects start to fall away. I think also a Derby project has also stumbled. So it's worth specifying. RIS2 isn't just big new roads. There's a lot of kind of, within that funding is maintenance and stuff like that, and you do need to maintain roads. So the whole of RIS2 doesn't need binning. What needs binning is are all of the major road investment projects. They just don't need to happen. For example, the A66, dualling. This road is a road that would benefit me hugely if it was made a dual carriageway in my old-fashioned brain, because I'm thinking, oh yeah, great, it'd be dual carriageway all the way to Scotland. Except that what would happen is that would induce more HGVs, more cars. That would get congested. You'd have more pollution, and you'd be potentially pulling people away from current modes of rail. So actually, this is also a stupid project that should be binned off. All of these major schemes just need binning off, all of them. Anyway, so there we go. Sorry to Highways England, but hopefully this project gets canned off. Hopefully other projects, major projects, get canned off. My press team told me off when I got vocal about RIS2. But as I pointed out to them, as a company, we should be opposing it too, just because it makes us money. We shouldn't be... Anyway, this upset them greatly. Consultancy. So, that's the news. The first road project to fall of RIS2, maybe, hopefully, we'll see. Let's move on to the fun, fizzy stuff. This nonsense. Look at it. It's not... Firstly, let me get my miniaturized... In fact, let me get my miniaturized face up in the corner. Hello, I'm up in the corner. This is not a trolley lorry, people. This is a pantograph. It's a double pantograph. Here it is, double pantograph. If it's got a pantograph and it's got catenary, this is a catenary supported. It's not tram lines. It's not a single cable. This is essentially OLE for road. It is not a trolley system. So stop calling them trolley lorries, you loonies. Anyway, right, that's that. Let's do this thing. I'm going to get rid of my miniaturized face, because otherwise my miniaturized face will be there throughout the whole of the starting credits. And it's all it remains really for me to do is for us to kick things off. Welcome to tonight's Rail Natter, everyone. City 225 fading away. I've put these two little circular images up here because a variety of things. Firstly, regular viewers will be aware that technology is interesting, and we can talk about it lots and lots, but actually technology is like only really, the technology side of these sorts of things is only one small facet. Invariably, it's the facet that everyone gets very excitable and jumpy, uppy, downy about. But actually, it's not the thing that drives whether something is a good idea or not. Let me get my miniaturized face back in the corner. Hello, I'm back. This is the key thing, absolutely key thing that just gets... yes. The bigger picture. Fundamentally, I'm flinging me whack-em around. Fundamentally, reality is way, way, way above... Oh, wow. I just had my second jab as of earlier today, so this arm isn't going quite as high as this arm, which is fine. I've had a jab, so I've got mild bruising around where I got a thing stuck into me. Everyone get vaccinated. Go. If you can, go. Unless you have valid, sensible medical reasons not to get vaccinated, everyone should go and get vaccinated. And that account, like 16 and 17-year-olds now too. I should have put that in the news. Hooray. Right. Anyway. So technology and reality, and we're going to be looking at both in this episode because I'm sure there are technology things that you want to be considering and chatting about, and so we will do a bit of Q&A on that. But what I'm going to do is going to go through some things. I'm going to split this in half, and then we'll have the Q&A session after I've gone through the kind of the bits and pieces. So kind of stack up your question. Wait, don't ask questions necessarily. I mean, fling stuff at me while we're going. But if you kind of want a Q&A question as a thing for us to explore, then save it up until we get to a point where I go big face. So, lots of people have already had their two jabs. I'm very pleased to say. So, let's go to the M180. We're going to the M180 because the M180 is where this trial is going to be, and it's not entirely. I'm not entirely clear on when exactly the plan is going to be for when this thing gets constructed. Others might well have more of an insight. I'm not sure if it's actually been published. And indeed, the money that's been talked about for this project is just for funding feasibility and kind of development. It's not funding the capital works. That's going to be, I think Siemens will be funding that. Possibly there's a consortium group of Siemens and Costain who are kind of palling up to do this as a thing. So I think they're going to self-fund it as a bit of a trial. To be honest, the nuts and bolts of the trial, not hugely fussed about necessarily at this point. And I'll explain why. But first, let's talk about the M180. Why is the M180 being picked for this trial? And indeed, in a minute, we'll talk about trial of what. Well, the M180 is being picked. There's the M180 there, that little bulgy bit here. There's the M180. This is our motorway network. There's the M180. Also, this little Scottish motorway network. Isn't that nice? I don't particularly know why. It just looks a bit strange. There's all this central belt stuff. Anyway, M180 down here. The reason it's been picked is because I should have done a little. Let's explain the M180 to everyone because it's a bit of a weird and pointless road. The M180 is here. It is. We're going to do this. This is the M180. It is a road that literally would not exist if it were not for the ports of Immingham, particularly, but also Grimsby, kind of Ferriby, and kind of particularly like the kind of the stuff that happens at Scunny as well, all along here, and then it connects up to Doncaster, which is a major freight distribution hub. So the M180 is this bit that runs along here all the way through here. If I go here, I want to visit. Oh, the Trolleybus Museum. Yeah, everyone should go and visit the Trolleybus Museum at Sandtoft. Anyway, so That's the M180, and it continues, and it goes into the A180 after that, and it also kind of connects up to the Humber Bridge with the A15. I have actually driven this once. I think I did a loop because I wanted to have a look anyway. And then there's also this weird bit with the M181 as the little spur thing, because it's a very strange road, folks, and it's the sort of road that for me embodies transport policy in the last century, because this road should have not been built, and what they should have done is expanded the railways to provide connectivity to hubs in Doncaster. Don't build the road, spend that on upgrading the railway, or indeed building a new railway to do the job. Instead, they built a motorway, and here we are. And if I now actually, I just minimise that because you might want to ask me questions about it later. So, oh, you don't have the cursor. Oh, it's fine. Yeah, I think you were vaguely seeing what I was describing. Yes, so M180, there it is, marvellous. It's quite weird seeing the abstract motorway map, isn't it? I continue to need to look at where railways don't exist on this map and ought to be, trunk railways. Anyway, that's by the by. So this whole thing, this scheme is part of the ZERFT project, the Zero Emissions Road Freight Trials, being coordinated by the DFT, and so kind of it's one part of a larger picture. They're looking not only at this electrified e-highway thing. They're looking at hydrogen fuel cell potential, which if you look to Nikola, you'll see how well that's going in the US. And for the benefit of listening viewers, I just drew my hand repeatedly across my neck in a sort of a it ain't happening kind of way. And then the supply chain technology, there's other things kind of feeding into it. There's some later kind of this later strands 3 and 4 are to do with supply chain and batteries as well. Yeah, so lots of kind of fancy tech to kind of try and keep us doing everything the way we've been doing it for decades. So clearly, I don't think that's a very good idea. But anyway, there's the DFT's logo for everyone to see. So having been in Scunthorpe, which is where the M180 passes, I think this trial is maybe going to be about 60 kilometres long, which is quite a long trial. The other trial, the trial that I went to see in Sandviken, in Gävleborg, which is in Sweden, went to see that trial, and it was like 3 or 4 kilometres long, if that. I think it was about 2 miles long, not very long at all. But that's where I've got all my technical knowledge about it, and so we are going to talk about that very briefly. But first of all, I need to explain. Oh, here's the trial site. Here it is. There's me filming out the window, and you can sort of see what it looks like. There it is. There is electrified highway. It's on the slow lane. It's just basically standard catenary. It's got a higher tension. I think its tension's quite a bit higher, 16 kilonewton tension. 2 cables because you've got to have a return current going through the roof, hence the 2 pantographs. But anyway, there it is. So this is the test site. Not hugely exciting. And we're now going to talk. So that was the test site, and we're going to talk about the technology bit, right? So we're going to start with the technology. So here is one of these lorries that's required to make this all work, right? Oh, it is very, very nice. This beer. I'm just going to top this up. Oh, lovely. So everyone needs to be, nourished and hydrated. So here it is. You can see the Siemens kit at the top. Looks very snazzy. But what is going on here? How does this work? What's happening? Well, vehicle side, it's fairly straightforward actually. So orange has happened. So for starters, you have a gearbox, which obviously provides drive power. Feeding into that gearbox is, the motor and the gearbox are 3 energy sources, 3 different energy sources. You have the conventional diesel engine. You have the pantograph at the top bringing juice in, and then as part of this you also have a battery, so you can get power from the diesel engine, you can get power from the pantograph. At the same time, you can get power from the pantograph. Power from the battery can also run it, and also the pantograph can charge the battery. So you've got these kind of this is the system of multiple sort of sources of energy, and it's as you can see from the kind of the picture, it's not. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get there. It's anyway, right, we'll have a look at the picture in a second. It's fairly compact, isn't it? So conventional operation is just as we all know, and this is what the trial vehicles will be doing for probably most of their mileage will be running off the diesel engine just as they do now. When the pantograph is raised, they get their electricity juice that powers the motor, and also that charges the battery as well. So the battery gets charged. Happy days. And you can also just rely on battery power. So you can, for whatever reason, for low emissions areas or in urban areas, you could potentially argue you can go off the battery, which itself is charged up. But the range of the battery, not so great. It's not a huge battery. I don't know the latest numbers, but the battery range was not great on these. It's like tens of kilometers, really, not a huge range. And that's that really. So there's the kit. You can see it's quite compact-ish. Just fits in behind the cab. The logic with these is that yes, it is a huge amount of extra weight the tractor will have to carry. I mean, I don't remember what the actual weight of these was, but looking at this, I'm expecting tons. 2 tons, 2 or more tons. It's quite a lot of extra mass, which means less weight in the trailer because you've got to meet your axle weights, right? So I don't think they do regenerative braking, Tom. No, it kind of relies on a hybrid drive, so I don't know to what extent they can potentially look at those technologies, but certainly the one I had, I don't think it had. I looked at, I don't think it had that tech. So the idea is that existing trucks almost will have this fitted. You almost buy it like you buy a mobile phone package, that you buy this, and in doing so you also buy the electricity. You kind of buy the electricity package and that's how it would be done. So I think that's how it's going to be commodified in that way, which given the regulatory mess that is electric vehicles already, that to me does not bode well either. But anyway, so that's the Lorry. We will. Oh, I tell you, let's pause briefly. Any question? Oh, you know what? No, let's not. We'll maybe bring this picture back up if we need to at the Q&A, but we'll get through the technology bit first. So you can actually hear our boy here describing some of the but we've already looked at this. We've kind of seen what these vehicles look like, and there it is. There's the OLE. You can see there's an overlap there. And we're going to look at here. We're going to look at one of the trucks. This is Powell, a Scania, nice Scania G360. It's a big old beast, but it's quite an old truck actually now. And this is weirdly this truck that Powell is the Scania test truck that has done more miles than any other Scania test truck in history. So they've tested the heck out of this. You can see all the people that have got involved on the side of the truck there. You can see all the people who've got involved in kind of making it happen. So Siemens Mobility, obviously major player, Scania major player, Region Gävleborg is another one, as the regional authority in Sweden, and then what is it? Trafikverket. My Swedish is dreadful, but that's the kind of the roads authority, the Highways England equivalent, essentially. And yeah, so this thing's got the range. This has the battery range on it, 3 kilometers. So it's not a huge battery range you're talking about for these things. It's a tiny range, absolutely tiny. And then you've got the numbers for like torque, and it's a 5 kilowatt hour battery. So there you are. There's some data for you. And here it is going past. So you see the pantograph. There we go, and it whizzes past, and it's not hugely exciting. So there we go. So here it is, and this is it on repeat, so you can just see it going past and past. Marvellous. The logic of these is that there is some logic behind it. Just there have to be transitionary technologies. Fighting climate change doesn't just come from one big "we've won everything" solution. It comes from lots of little systems changes, of which this is clearly one. So for 100 kilowatt hours, this is kind of generated this way. This is the pathway to what you can get in terms of range. So this system, the e-highway system we're talking about here, theoretically can get you 60 kilometers in terms of the efficiency of the total system. With battery, this can get you 48 kilometers. And then I think here they're talking about sort of some of the alternatives. Hydrogen only gets you 24 kilometers, so that's like less than half the range of having this e-highway system. And then the conversion into like biofuel using that energy gets you only 17 kilometers because it's such an inefficient process. There's so many different processes there. So the fewer processes you have, the better, really. They're saying battery's good, but they're not accounting for the fact that obviously that accounts for like quite a lot of extra mass. So theoretically, the e-highway system does make sense. Like, it does make sense in that sense. You are not putting the power... Okay, it's got a trifling tiny little battery, but that battery really is for... if you can run, if you have to pan down briefly for whatever reason. I'll talk about how pan down works in a moment. But it just in the same way as electrifying railways makes sense technologically, electrifying roads actually does make some sense. You're taking the power source out of the vehicle, you can generate the electricity however you like, and that moves your mass. Great. And also part of the Siemens sort of system, their kind of overall package they're talking about is that you can mix and match all sorts. So you can go for like parallel or serial hybrids, you can go full electric. You've got lots of different options depending. The logic they're trying to make is they're trying to make it as modular as possible. So you can have all manner of different combinations and some such. And I won't dwell on this, but you can understand that they're offering a sort of a system that and theoretically the fact that it's this modular thing that sticks onto the back of the vehicle, of the back of the tractor, you can sort of imagine how it might be vaguely modular. But anyway, right, so yeah, well, I'm not yammering about that. So yeah, you can see the infrastructure here. So we've talked about the vehicle. Obviously, the infrastructure is pretty straightforward. It's just OLE kit. And it has the benefit of, OLE kit. We talk about discontinuous electrification being a stupid idea on railways. It is. On roads, not so much, because you don't have the operational issues of having to worry about pan up, pan down. These lorries are always going to have an alternative power source, whether it's that 3-kilometer battery or whether it's the diesel. They're always going to have an alternative kind of. There's Powell. They're always going to have that alternative. There's the what was it? What do they call it? It's like a converter station to get the juice in. Anyway, it's not that big a deal. There's a anchor. I presume that's a. Is that an overlap? It's just a section. There we are. OLE words, all the OLE words. Anyway, it's just conventional OLE. You can do discontinuous because how the pantograph thing works. And I think I've got slides for this, but I'll just re-explain it when it appears. At the slightest hint of lost contact, the pan drops, so it's much lower risk. Whereas with a train, if you drop the pan, your train's stuck. That's not so much the issue with these. So they don't have to wire up complicated junctions. They don't have to. There are lots of things they can do that are more straightforward. They don't even have to wire up. So yeah, they don't have to wire up things like even if they've got a particularly horrible bridge, they don't have to wire that up because. And a lot of people say, well, that pantograph's going to get smashed. No, if there's no contact, it's not possible for you to lift the pantograph. So unless you actively press the button to lift it, if it doesn't sense contact, it'll just it'll drop again. If it doesn't get the contact, it'll drop again. So you're not going to press the button actively as you go towards a bridge, unless you kind of fancied it. But there's like. Fancy making a mess. So it does make sense.
Now on the left,
it does make some sense, right? Oh, so let's talk about some tech things. I'm just going to try and annihilate all of the tech questions that I've been getting. Stagger is a common one that appears. So on a railway, you can see if you look here, you see that there's there's stagger between the sort of structures. So watch that above. You can see the stagger between different structures, right? Well, you notice if you go to the electrified highway, you'll see that it's just a straight line the whole time, straight. The reason for that is a couple-fold. Number one, you need, well, in both cases, the thing called stagger is because if you have the pantograph horn here and you've got you've got your strip of whatever it is, coppery material here that's picking it, carbon strip or whatever that's picking up, and you have the cable in one place, eventually your carbon strip will look like this and it'll be no good. You'll have you'll have worn a hole in your carbon strip, which is bad. So what you do is you've got this stagger, you move the contact wire side to side, and it evenly wears the contact strip at the top, right? Fairly straightforward. On a railway, the only option you have is to do that between structures. So it ends up with this zigzag, which is fine. Doesn't matter, right? On a road, the way that they do this is not by putting stagger on the OLE. What they do is the vehicle is set with lane control to stagger. I think actually they're relying on just the general movement of the vehicle within lane control when I asked them in Sweden. But one of the things they talked about is the potential to use positive lane control, and it won't weave between the lane at the same frequency that the OLE structures do, because it doesn't need to. It can have a much slower frequency, so you wouldn't even notice it happening, but it can gently move the vehicle kind of from side to side in the lane within certain bounds to make sure that those two pantographs get their carbon strip worn nice and evenly. So that's the point of it. Tension. Here's a cutaway of the table here. You can see this sign here, which is quite clear, saying "Please don't touch." But that's because there's a model behind it. I don't think it was about this nice section of contact wire. That's what contact wire looks like, by the way. It's the same for regularly. You get the sort of the structures that sit here, the little sort of things that sit here, and then connect it up to the hangers. That's what it looks like. And eventually, it flattens here, but as it gets worn out. But that's basically a standard cable. Nothing fancy about that. Standard line. Lots of it can lift. It can lift while in motion. Yes, it can lift while in motion. I think I've got a video of it doing that in a minute. So. Tension, yes. The thing with trucks, with road vehicles, is as much as there are kind of lots of other issues with having big pneumatic tyres in terms of energy efficiency, one of the things is that vertically, unlike trains, which are pretty vertically rigid, road vehicles, they bounce and they're very bouncy and squishy, because you've got the road, which is actually a bit squishier, but particularly you've got a tyre, you've got the suspension, which is very squidgy, a tyre that's very kind of squidgy. And you've got the sort of the whole thing is just generally very squishy. So if you've stuck a pantograph on the top of here, this thing's going to be bouncing around all over the place, right? So what they found they had to do is increase the uplift force on the pantograph a lot. So this thing gets a lot of force to make sure that it's constantly in contact with the contact wire. As a result of that force, you need to then have more tension force on the cable to stop the cable bowing upwards. So this thing, unlike conventional OLE, which, what is it, 12? Oh, you can't see because let me go no face briefly. 16 kilonewtons there. I think conventional OLE is like 12, right? 12 and a half kilonewtons. So this is 16 kilonewtons. So the OLE kit is more beefy on a motorway than it will be. That's higher strength, therefore it's beefier than railway OLE kit. Lane control will increase road friction. Yeah, it definitely would. You're going to end up with less efficiency, but the idea is that when you're doing that under the wires, it wouldn't matter so much. Good point, Tim. So that's how tension works. There we go. So again, it's a nice picture of the vehicle going past at slow speed. These things are limited to 90 kilometers an hour, by the way. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of non-electrified HGVs overtaking them on the M180, methinks. Unless they've increased the speed, which I doubt. So there we are. You can see you can see it's a bit beefier, the kit. This is just next to a bridge, so you can see there's the shrouds on the on the contact wire down here. You can see the shroudy shroud. They are to protect the underside of the bridge. So control. Well, this is the inside of the vehicle, and you can see there's a button here which lifts your. This is your button to lift the pantograph, and then this is, I presume, just a illumination. There's little illuminations there that say whether the pan is up or down. So there's just one button in the cab. It's that simple. One little button. And they are... Where are these? I can't even see where they are. They're just here. There we are. This is our satin Powell. Yeah, and that's it. That was the truck. It's as simple as that. Here is the picture. Here's the video you've all been waiting for. Here we go. You can see this is us in a coach driving behind it. And you can see here's the cables coming in, going along, doo-doo-doo. I think the driver raises and then drops the pantograph because they realise... Actually, I don't think they're allowed to run it on the curve for this trial. They're only allowed to run it on the straight. So they lift it and then it doesn't get contact, and then you see it drops immediately again. So I don't know whether that was an accident or not. But anyway, there we go. So you can see it can be lifted. They can be lifted by pressing that button on the move. People are asking why two pantographs. And on a railway, let me just click out here. Let me go into here. Where's my mouse gone? Basically, let's wait until we've got. So essentially, on a railway, you've got rails here, right? And so to complete the current, you just have one pantograph. And so the electricity goes in there, through here, makes the train go fast, and then you get onto through one of the rails, you get the return current, and it returns to kind of a line side doodad, and then it comes back, and then you've got your current, right? Because electricity you need to have a completed circuit, right, for it to work. There's nothing down here to complete the circuit. So what you need to do is it comes in. Wait a minute. We'll wait until we go back to the start again. So yeah, exactly. So it comes in one. Oh, this isn't going to work quite as nicely. It comes in one, and then it goes out the other. So you end up your circuit from whatever your battery is, or whatever your power source is. It's coming in, going in here, and then powering your thing, and then it's coming back through the other one and back in to complete your circuit. I've forgotten my physics symbols. Jordan Jack is Jordan. Wait a minute, Jordan. Yes, we'll get to that. You're right, Jordan. Bear with us on a sec on that. Yeah, we're getting there. So anyway, that's that. That's how that works. That's why there's two pantographs. Power. I don't even remember what. Oh yeah. I was going to say something about how these are sourced. You can kind of look at so you can look at the OLE while we're chatting. Hello, Andy Bell. Hello, everyone. So
clean the window. I know, right? Why didn't we think of that?
That's people getting very excitable and looking at the OLE kit. It's not that hugely exciting. You can sort of see it. There is no stagger. Sort of the slightly offset looking thing. I think possibly just to reduce the construction height. If you've got that slightly angled design, it just reduces the construction height. I think nothing more snazzy than that. Yeah, and there is, C is pretty conventional OLE kit, right?
Making one of my friends Gary cry as well.
So, anyway, right. That's enough of me waffling and chatting to people in a coach while I film that. Here is the this is the, what was it? A rectifier? Is that what it was called? I can't exactly remember. Where's Gordon Jilks when you need him, who understands power? Anyway, this thing, I think it's fairly straightforward. You just need some kit to get whatever your DNO is. You just feed it pretty much the same way you do the OLE. I don't think it's particularly complex. Right, so that was the technology, and we're going to talk about reality in a moment. But questions. Let's go big face, because this is we're saying getting back to our roots. We're already 37 minutes in. The next bit's much shorter. So questions. Could long distance coaches use this as well? Yeah. Well, yeah, they could probably. Yeah. If there's more OLE, there's more expertise to an extent. Jordan, that's all right. My train of thought gets derailed all the time. People are used to it. It annoys some people, but they aren't. They're not who I'm here. They're not the audience. It's fine. No, it's not auto transformers, and it's not transformers. Thanks for your inputs. But no, there's another one. Wait a minute. I'll just get my. Go to Twitter and get there's a thread I did where I was actually looking at, in real time while I was watching these, that I think might be more useful. Yeah, and this is me doing a super search. Let me just, because I'll tell you exactly what it is. The name for that piece of technology. I've finally got it in my head how to pronounce how to actually pronounce the name of the region, Yevlebora. Which is where it is. Where? Rectifier. I was right. It is a rectifier station. What that means, OLE people will know what that means. Yeah. Right. Here are the questions coming. So, long distance. What are the benefits of 1 kilometer road OLE versus 1 kilometer rail OLE? We'll get to that momentarily. Is the system AC or DC? It's AC. So I think it's AC. 25 kV. I think it's just the same as regular OLE, actually. What would happen if a car breaks down under the wires? Not really a big deal. Vehicles they'd drop their pan, or even if they don't drop their pan, as soon as they lose contact, the pans will drop anyway. They just indicate, move around it, and then raise the pan where they can. So that's not a big deal. Having two pans seems a rather unreliable concept. Oh, not particularly. It's more points of failure, but it's just a way to provide the circuit, isn't it? Turns AC into DC. I was sure this is AC, not DC. So let me get that thread back up that I just closed. Just a second. I can provide questions via that. So, nope. Yep, you're all correct. I'm speaking nonsense. It's 750 DC overhead. Yep, it's 750 DC overhead catenary system. So that explains that. Should listen to my own information. Yes, it's DC. Yes, DC, 750 DC. I'll write it down for anyone who's partially sighted on the thing. Wait, there. 750 DC. There we are. No one can see that, but I'm going to just do this. There, see, 750 DC. That makes it real. Can I speak to safety systems with the OLE for when a vehicle hits a pole? When's a vehicle going to hit a pole? They're just going to have Armco along the whole side of the motorway, which in most cases you do anyway, so I don't think that's too much of an issue. Yes, everyone's saying rectifiers convert AC to DC. Yeah, it's yes, that, yeah. I'm dumb. I've corrected myself now. Thanks, everyone. My thread has a lot of this information, and so I can kind of recommend that. And then there's another video that I will put up, which is an interview with the two folks in the technical and the kind of the regional people in charge of this. Can we have a link to this Twitter thread? Yeah, I can literally send it through now. Wait a minute, I'll do just that. Link that thread right now in the chat. There it is, linked. Marvelous. And there's also this is my first sort of Q&A on this, which I'm going to link to now. There we go. Let me get rid of that and do. There we go. I don't know how to then download these anymore. I need to learn that. But if I click this will also give you a link to a bit of a Q&A that you can actually go and watch on Periscope that I did at the time, which was really good, and it kind of inspired me to do Rail Matters. So we very much are getting back to our roots. Is there a danger to motorists who have broken down in the hard shoulder? Not particularly. No more than there is now with HGVs going past. Yeah. John Christoph says, given it's 750 volts DC, are there any safety precautions necessary if a motorist has to pull over to the shoulder and exit the vehicle, e.g. for a flat tyre? I don't think particularly there are. Yeah, I mean, they've been running the system in Sweden for a long while, and they don't seem to have any problems with kind of basic safety stuff, systemic stuff. You know, they're running. The trial was with I think only 4 trucks, but the drivers were kind of as part of the wider fleet, just kind of doing the thing that all the other trucks were doing. So it wasn't particularly dramatic. So they were running it long enough that the drivers would kind of forget themselves and get used to it, rather than it being completely novel. You know, it was running for quite a long time. Oh, Ned, where are you? What have you pointed out, Ned? 750 DC is most North American light rail. Right, good. Right, fine. Marvellous. Most people seem to manage under tram wires, so they should be fine. They're probably a bit higher. Yeah, agreed. So the whole point of this technology bit is to say the technology is fine. It's fine. There's no problems with it. The vehicles can go 90 kilometers an hour, no faster. The technology is fine. It works. This is not the problem. The technology is easy. Let's talk about the hard things, i.e. reality. Yes, Ned Carlson, no implications for safety under the wires. It's just tram wires. It's just easy. Tram wires, not a big deal. People walk around under tram wires all the time. Not a problem. So let us return to my miniaturized face. There we go. So we're going to talk about reality. We're going to talk about some stats and the context and why the technology working and these actually being a sensible idea technologically isn't the whole picture. So let's start with some data, shall we? Some data on, Will, you're right. All of the UK DC railway network is 750 volts nominally. It varies between 600 and 800, but nominally 750 volts DC, and yes. But that's in a stupid third rail, so the best not to worry about that. Right, we're going to talk about GHGs, greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to look at 2019 total greenhouse gas emissions for the UK, greenhouse gas emissions breakdown for the UK, but we're going to start with the total number, which is 455 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent emitted by everything in the UK. Transport emitted 122 of those million tonnes of CO2 equivalent. And indeed, 111 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent were from road transport. So road transport is very much the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the UK. But if we break down into that, how much are HGVs? You know, what is the potential for these wires? You know, what could we save? Well, of that, only it's still a big old number. 19.5 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent are emitted annually by HGVs in the UK. So it's quite a lot less than the overall big picture, but it's still a fairly sizable amount. It's about 4.5% of total UK emissions. And if you want an idea of scale, rail freight, here's rail freight, in its current state, by the way, which is some of the highest carbon intensity rail freight in Europe, and actually globally, in fact. As RIA's Why Electrify report showed in great detail, we have a hopelessly carbon-intensive railway. But the thing is, railways are incredibly good even when they are carbon-intensive because they're so much more efficient at moving stuff around. You know, one engine moving up to 80 lorries, 80 HGVs worth. We'll get to some other points that relate to that momentarily. So, rail freight in the UK emitted 0.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent, so a tiny fraction. In fact, this table kind of breaks things down a bit more neatly. So yeah, the UK total 455. Transport is 27% of that. Road transport is 24.5% of that. HGVs are 4.5% of that total. So these are the totals of overall UK annual emissions. Rail freight is less than 0.1% of total UK GHG emissions. So rail freight essentially has an insignificant contribution to make to UK annual emissions. So this is where it comes back to the point that electrifying just for the sake of decarbonisation for rail, particularly for rail freight, is pointless. But that's not what electrification is about. This is the thing that people need to get in their head. Electrification is not about decarbonisation purely in an emissions sense. It's about bigger things than that, and we're going to talk about that momentarily. Key things, key facts to remember. Annual rail freight emissions are equivalent to around 2.5% of HGV emissions. So, rail freight emits a tiny amount compared to HGVs. Annual rail freight ton kilometres, however, are 11% of HGV ton kilometres. So rail is moving more than it's emitting. And actually, with some very rough calculations, you can see that rail is kind of about 4 times less carbon intensive. There's me in. This is an awful colour. Let me just do this in a better colour. Come on now. Let me change this to let's go white. Rail is 4 times less carbon intensive. You know what I mean. Carbon intensive, marvelous. It's me, John Maddening my way through things. Other points that are relevant. If you want, let's. People like talking about HS2 carbon. In HS2's worst case, HS2 emits 14 million tons of CO2 equivalent. In a worst case, total construction and operation costs. So annual HGV. So every year, HGVs emit 1.4 HS2s. The rail freight emissions emit 0.04 high-speed 2s a year. So there's the difference in terms of annual emissions. That's the scale. That's the scale that we're talking about. Rail freight emissions are just not a thing to worry about. Right, now we're going to list some issues. So, and we're going to come back to this, and you can ask queries, and we can chat about other things. Yeah, someone said, David Bumstead, insert image of DB Green 66 smoking like a chimney. Yeah, I know, right? Here are just some of the things I've thought of that are a challenge, right? And I'll whiz through these in seconds. Just some of the issues. So we have number 1 on our little list here. Engineering skills. This will require and will sap engineers that we desperately need and don't have enough of to deliver railway electrification. Number 2, carbon intensity. What is the carbon intensity and the impact associated with constructing OLE for roads? We don't have a good understanding of that. What's the impact? Given the amount of disruption, the amount of infrastructure you have to build. This is a DC system. It's DC, which means that you need lots of line-side or kind of roadside kit. There are lots of roadside kit. That's carbon intensive. And also the power draw is going to be potentially higher. I imagine is higher than the energy draw for a railway, given the frequency of vehicles. So you'll need even more power kind of substations next to it. Lack of drivers. This is not resolving a critical issue we have, which is the chronic shortage of drivers. So this isn't helping that problem at all. The speed of infrastructure rollout. How quickly can this be rolled out? Given road construction timescales, how quickly it can be rolled out? Another issue here. We've got we've got an unknown total system. It's all very well looking at that isolated little patch, but how does that work in terms of the total system? How does the funding mechanism work for the OLE? How does the commercial model work, the business model work for getting that kit attached to vehicles? What's the maintenance look like for the kit behind the vehicle? Whereas we know what rail freight looks like as a total system. We understand it. It's a known system. The speed of road versus rail vehicle upgrade. This is kind of one of the queries more than a problem, but how quickly are we upgrading? Are we going to be upgrading rail vehicles, electrified rail vehicles, compared to how quickly can we upgrade the road fleet? You might say something like, well, it's going to take decades before the 66s are replaced. Yeah, but also have a look how slowly the UK is swapping out its, buying electric vehicles. How slowly the rate of the percentage between electric and non-electric vehicles is really very slow. Because government's not interested in actually stepping in. The funding model itself, is not only not been written down, but it's untested, and it's there are some suggestions that it'll rely on a reduction in fuel duty, and I think the discussion I had with Jan, who is kind of in charge of this trial for Region Gävleborg in Sweden, said that it really relies on road pricing. You've got the people are talking about, issues related to road OLE being damaged and needing emergency repairs. That's not such a big deal because it's very easy to just put a load of cones around and resolve the problem. People cone off lanes in motorways all the time. I don't think that's such a big issue. It's easier than on a railway. It does absolutely nothing for urban logistics. This is still resulting in HGVs. It's potentially doing the opposite. It's actually potentially enabling HGVs to operate within urban centres, which is just a bad thing, not just because of emissions, but because of the size of the vehicles, the damage they cause, the risk they present to other road users, cars, bikes, motorcycles, particularly pedestrians. And fundamentally, the main issue with this, and this is the issue with so much of the DfT's decarbonisation plan, so much of it is reliant on. And this isn't really the DfT's problem. That's kind of their scope being set by ministers. It's the lack of inspiration and vision with our ministers. It's incentivising the status quo. This is just saying, well, how are we going to keep everything how it is, but reduce the carbon emissions from it? Which is just not going to work. It is not going to work. Fundamentally, the electrification of rail enables modal shift. The reason why electrification is a good idea for railways is not because you get rid of point of use emissions. That's not the get rid of carbon emissions by having electric trains isn't the main benefit. The main benefit is that you enable a better railway system, which means that you can drive more people, or rather you can push more people or pull more people away from road and air onto rail, and that is where you make the carbon savings. Whereas electrification of road embeds modal stasis. It embeds keeping everything exactly how it is. It embeds all the road traffic collision issues. The roads. Britain's roads are pretty safe, but in terms of road safety, 2,000 to 3,000 people a year killed on our roads. 25,000 people killed or seriously injured every year on our roads. 25,000. So many people who have their lives ended or changed as a result of road collisions. This does nothing for that. This embeds that as a problem. You've got all of the material consumption, all the battery kit, all that metalwork, all of the plastics for every single HGV to have all this kit added to it. That does not have, that is just moving down around one lorry's worth of kit. You've got all that multiplication of weight, all the extra weight of kit, just moving one lorry's worth of goods around. So the systemic issues with this are what the problem is. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea, because it is offering a chance for us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So this really comes back to how it fits into the policy framework that the DfT is presenting, but more importantly that the Cabinet Office and that the Cabinet and ministers are providing. And it feeds also into, go back to episode 24, whether road pricing is the future. Fundamentally, this system cannot work this system cannot work without us changing the way that roads are funded in this country, and road pricing has to be the future. It absolutely has to be the future. So yeah, there's Richard Smith is pointing out the fact that there's going to be this situation where you've got drivers constantly downing the pantograph to overtake a lorry going 1 kilometre an hour faster, then putting it up for 100 metres before taking it down again to overtake another lorry. Well, yeah, indeed. Peter Princhich is asking, would it be somehow sensible to put an induction wire under the asphalt? No, because that would be an absolute nightmare to install and maintain, and would cause all sorts of other issues with pacemakers and stuff. No, I don't think that would be a very good idea at all. They are reduced to a lower maximum speed. They'll be 90 kilometers an hour, yeah. So, again, yeah, in Britain, given that we know what our HGV drivers can be like, you're just going to have constant traffic of like HGVs overtaking other HGVs, or just not using it so they can overtake. The thing is, the way that gets fixed is by the same way that you currently have, is by driver management systems and by fuel management systems on HGVs. So if they come back having burnt a load of fuel when they'll have had someone go out and use the optimum amount based on using the OLE as much as they can, those drivers will get penalised. So actually, I don't think that's so much of an issue. I think that won't be so much of an issue. Something about tramwires. Can we have lorries that also run on tram and trolleybus cables? Absolutely not, because that's essentially permanently fixed onto the cables, so that just doesn't work, no. David Shepard, doesn't work at all. Right, so back to these numbers, because there is one final point that I want to make in terms of policy, which is the main despairing thing that I have to say about this. And it's relevant because it was being brought up on the news this morning with a stupid client journalism piece by the Beeb about fuel duty prices. You might see where I'm going with this. Just pouring myself a bit of beer. I'm gonna have a fairly sizable glug before I say this, because otherwise I'll spittoon it everywhere. Oh, that's very, very nice indeed. Tim Ballum, emissions pricing is the way forward. You'll go back to if you haven't watched it already, go back to the road pricing episode where we kind of account for that. So, I also know, I don't agree that emissions pricing is the way forward, because to some extent road vehicles are still problematic even if they're not emitting anything at the point of use. So the issue is this thing I'm flashing up at the bottom, because there is a carbon cost to the fact that we've had fuel duty frozen since 2010, right? And Carbon Brief, there's a really good little paper and some research that's gone into this. And in fact, it's a bit of a systemic review of several papers that looked at this. And they estimate that the impact of the fuel duty freeze is around 20 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent per year. Now, where's that number familiar? So that's accounting for about 4.5% of total UK annual emissions. Now, wait a minute. If we just have a look at HGV emissions are 19.5 million tonnes CO2 equivalent a year. So yeah, if we go to this, so basically, we could scratch through and cancel out all of those emissions from HGVs if we simply hadn't frozen fuel duty for that period of time. Hopeless. So yeah, basically, you could, if we think about the fuel duty freeze accounting for 20 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent, that would have got rid, that essentially would have cancelled out that HGV benefit. So if we talk about policy changes, you can see that there are bigger things at play here than a little bit of technology putting some wires above some of our motorways. And actually, I'm sceptical as to the speed that you could roll that sort of a solution out. Anyway, railway electrification is so much better because you're getting, and in fact, yes, there's the reality. Oh, you know what? We'll do some electrification ranting momentarily, but I'm going to conclude, and then we'll go back to the Q&A, and we can kind of finish our chat. We've got 2 minutes before the hour, but we'll do a bit of Q&A after this. So, is it a good idea? I don't think it is a good idea, but I don't begrudge this trial. I don't begrudge science, and empirical data collection. So I'm jury's out on it being a broadly bad idea. I want to see how the trial goes. I think it'll get stuck in hot water. I think it'll have lots of challenges because the tech is easy, the technology, the infrastructure is easy. What is not easy is the policy framework, the road pricing, getting HGV companies to have any interest in this whatsoever, this sort of thing. So in a way, electrify all, hashtag electrify all the things. I'm kind of keen for this as on the one side as a way to, as a contributing factor in reducing GHG emissions. But given what I understand, the big but, given what I understand about the political context is everything, folks. Go back to episode 37 and why it's so important to tell people that Hyperloop is bad. This is the same sort of thing. This is that sort of FMAM political context. The reason it's critical is because is this going to be used, is this thing going to be used as an excuse to avoid... Well, it's not so much an excuse to avoid investment. Is it an excuse to delay investment? Because HMT is like, yeah, but that roads thing looks cheaper probably. So we'll do that instead of electrifying railways, right? And this is the fundamental thing, right? Railways, here's a gorgeous picture of a nice Class 88 here, hammering over the hill with some nice, with its pan up. Just looking so much more competent under the wires, it has to be said. This is how you move goods around, for God's sake. The thing with the railway electrification is, I've gone on a lot about the fact that our current horrendously carbon-intensive rail freight fleet is still so much better than the road freight fleet because of the fact that it's carbon-intensive compared to others because we haven't electrified our railway network and there's so many Class 66s around. But it's still so much better than road freight, 4 times better, 4 times less carbon-intensive than road freight, despite the fact that all of it's moving around, by Class 66s for the most part. So just imagine what happens when we do all those little infill schemes and it electrifies. That carbon intensity will drop away rapidly, making the it even better than road. But what's more important is not that carbon intensity at all. It's the modal shift. It's the fact that if you've electrified railways, you get the benefit of them for both passengers and freight. But you've got the acceleration. You've got more. The trains are more powerful, so they can haul more freight more quickly. They can fit into timetables more easily because they accelerate more rapidly. So it's not about the emissions. It's about the fact that you get a better railway system with electrification, which enables modal shift towards rail because it can move more quickly, more frequently, and it works better for the customer. This is the critical thing. So yes, this is the electrifying railways is the answer. My fear is that this gets used as an excuse to further delay rail infrastructure electrification. But I'm going to give the DFT the benefit of the doubt because in the transport decarbonisation plan, as we're going to finish next week, by the way, we got the first half done, it talks about rolling programme electrification. So we've kind of almost won that battle again. Almost. Not quite there yet. Until it's happening, until there is a team working on it and I see the plan rolling ahead in front of us, I won't believe it. But the talk is there. It is not, that once that gets moving, and I think once the rolling program actually gets some inertia behind it and starts making progress, that will hopefully just continue to happen because it'll start transcending electoral boundaries. So that it'll start transcending electoral dates and sort of election cycles, and that'll help. So, given that, yes, there's a skills shortage, but I would argue that we need to be growing those skills majorly anyway. So I'm going to come out in this and say, despite the fact I've got a picture of a nice Class 88 with its pan up here, I'm all for the trial. I want to see it happen. It can open up some discussions, but all that other political context stuff is very important. So let's go big face. Chuck your questions in my direction, folks. Richard Smith is saying it'll make a great Tom Scott, Tim Traveller, Jeff Marshall video in 2035 when it's a weird isolated trial that's due to close in 2037, so you better come by and check it out. Well, yeah, indeed. Have I heard of the rail delivery groups? I think idea to operate 100 mile per hour intermodal trains. That's been an idea for a very long time. It's not RDGs. But, yeah, all for it. Any other queries? Go on. I was going to actually have some like rave music, and I was going to do a rave for the fact that I'd had my second jab, and I was going to do this with the lights. Content warning: this video is going to contain potentially flashing lights, although I don't think it'll be quite dramatic enough to cause anyone an episode. But just I was going to do my rave. Watch them all flash out. It's not a very good rave, was it? I needed some music anyway. SciGuy16, seeing parallels with what happened to all the private owner wagons when railways started requiring fitted freight. That's interesting, yeah. See the freight episode that we had momentarily. What was it, last week, 2 weeks ago? I've done some pre-records, so I've totally forgotten when episodes were. People are asking what the budget is. The budget is so-and-so. Wait a minute, tell me that. Let me just go in here. I think the budget for this bit is... it's so many £1 million. The actual budget for constructing the infrastructure is TBC at this point. The current massive and long-term shortage of HGV drivers should be a big incentive to push towards freight on rail. Absolutely, Detour. Yeah, could not agree. Like that is it's not an issue it's not going to get fixed. Episode 71 was freight. Thanks. What episode is this? 73. So it was 2 episodes ago. Thanks, James P. Detour. Yeah, absolutely agree. Driver shortage is just the critical issue. Is like an absolutely critical issue we are facing, because it's resulting in us having lots of empty supermarket shelves. So this is we desperately need to be sorting that problem out, because our supply chain is currently crumbling. Brexit and people having or being close to others with coronavirus is wiping out our supply chains. Remember to at me if you've got a question. At me, so my name appears in red, because it means I can easily spot this. David Shepherd. People have all been asking about coaches. Would OLE on roads work for the National Express? For coaches too? Yeah, sure. I don't know. I don't know to what extent you'd. Coaches are quite a lot lighter, and they don't necessarily have the. You'd maybe possibly struggle to build a coach that could work with it. Thinking about structurally how coaches look and work. Someone could make it work, I'm sure. But if you were having the thing about a tractor is that it sits halfway between the structure of the actual vehicle. If you've got the kind of tractor, I haven't got a little toy lorry anywhere near me, I'm afraid. You got the tractor at one end and then the bit behind. If the OLE is sitting in the back, it's kind of nicely balanced between the two. With a coach, you've not really got anywhere to put that kind of pack, that battery pack, and the kind of pantograph. So, yeah. Detour is pointing out that HGV driving is a hard job. Yeah, hard in both senses. It's technically challenging, and also it is just tough. It's a tough life, right? Jordan Jack, are they going to platoon them if this trial is successful? No, platooning has disappeared. People who talked about platooning for a while, it hopelessly did not work. They trialled it in Norway, I think, for a while, and it was a disaster, so they've just given up. Platooning has sort of disappeared as a thing. As I said it would back in 2018, 2017, when I wrote my first piece for Rail magazine talking about this very subject. It's worth pointing out that there are lots of benefits of rail freight over road. Where is it? Rail freight versus road haulage. Gareth Dennis. Searching my own name on Google, but only because it means I can link you this piece in the chat. There we are. Pop this in here in the chat. This piece you can read if you're interested to understand that some of the various myriad benefits of rail over road. Peter Princhich has enjoyed that rant. Just push. Some roads in Germany and Austria are made of concrete. Can an induction wire be part of the rebars in concrete road? I don't think so. I think you'd end up with a challenge with corrosion control. I just don't think putting extra infrastructure in the road is necessarily good. It's a bit like the people talk about solar panel roads. It just never ends up working. It's one of those things that it works, looks nice, sounds nice, but it's a bit FM. It's not very AM. Ned Carlson, I think the question for coaches would be whether you can work with the pans being right at the rear. MCI is already playing with hybrid highway coaches. That's interesting. Okay. What else? What will Tim Ballum? Will the lorry drivers be able to choose who they buy their electricity from? Yeah. So this is a TBC thing. How does this work? I think the idea would be that you'd certainly the Swedish model looked like, or they expected, Siemens expected that you'd buy the kit from a consortium like Siemens Costain. There'd be a single provider, a monopoly basically. You buy the kit off them, and then you pay them for the electricity you use, and it's essentially metered that way. Matteo is saying induction is hugely inefficient. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Would this push more Richard, you've added your own name in, not mine, but I'll forgive you. Would this push more consolidation at out-of-town motorway adjacent depots, which in turn would encourage car commuting to, from, and may be hard to consolidate for use by rail? That's a big macro question. No, I think one thing it might do is further de-incentivize that shift from... because, as I keep saying, ULEZ is an urban municipal transport, ultra-low emission zones, are going to mean that lorries are going to stop being able to access centres of towns and cities, which means they're going to have to stop. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you make HGVs have to stop at the border of a town, you're undermining that benefit. You're undermining that the advantage that road has of not having to interchange, because it's the interchange that makes it expensive. So that's where rail then can really pick up the slack, because if you're interchanging onto a little van to get into the centre of the city, either by rail or by road, suddenly all of rail's benefits of being massively kind of cheaper, massively more energy efficient, and more reliable. Actually, all of those benefits come to the fore. So there's definitely. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with the questions over here. There's definitely a kind of a playoff there, I think, in terms of the macro effects. Yeah, again, the trouble we've got is that the FT is not interested in incentivizing that level. They're not interested in incentivizing that change. That's where the change is. If you put ULEZs in every major why is that not? The trouble is they get lobbied, so they don't want to do something that's actually results in fundamental change. And it's that's this argument of economic balance and all this stuff. But if they want change, introduce plans for ultra low emission zones in all towns and cities greater than 100,000 people across the country, and make it that in those you're not allowed to enter the area of central density. You have to offload at the border, and that will just start making changes happen. It really will start making changes happen. Here we are. HST, do you think this Cardiff-Swansea line should be upgraded and electrified because it suffers a similar problem to the West Coast Main Line? That's kind of by the by, really, in this chat, I think. Richard Smith, in the 60s to the 80s, there was talk of converting the Chiltern Main Line into a motorway/road. Turning on its head, which motorway/road would you convert into a railway? Ha! Everyone's getting distracted now and using... Well, I need to have just a general Ask Me Anything railnet, don't I? Because people have so many questions. HST Trains and Richard Smith, you're teasing us with these fun questions that, yeah. Indeed, yeah, Tim Ballin saying, suddenly all the supermarkets back onto the railways. Just go back and watch that episode 71 about rail freight and the demise of rail freight. Because there's so many things that are like, that's a brilliant idea. Why are we still not doing that? And as Simon Zev Kendler, who is a freight professional, literally a rail freight professional, is saying, that's what the supermarkets want to do now. They want to do this. There isn't the capacity in the railway network to do this stuff. So we as an industry have to catch up. We really do. And that requires major upgrades, new lines to free up capacity in the existing network for more freight. For people who often ask, and I'm going to second guess it, no, a dedicated new railway freight railway line is a stupid idea, because you'd have to then build lots of extra things to connect that into depots. No. What you do is you free up capacity in the existing railway, because that's where all the depots and things are plugged into. This isn't, it's far better to do that than to build a dedicated, because it wouldn't solve any problems, really. David Shepard, how many of our ports and airports have no rail freight? Oh, so many. Right, okay, that's enough. That's enough of that. It's I've been going for an hour and 11. Let us return to moving my face away from your eyes. Here we go. So, the podcast. In fact, the podcast is... It's back. The pod is back. It's fixed. Ella's fixed it. Heel helped. Everyone's fixed it. The pod is back. So this should be in all good streaming platforms. The podcast should have returned to your ears. Sorry for all of you who've only just catching up with things. Apologies. We're there. We're there now. It's back. Ella is in the process of automating it as well, which will make it even better. Apart from a few hiccups of laptop death. Go support Ella on Coffee or whatever platform she uses so that she can buy a new laptop. And yeah, there is also railnatter.com now exists. It's basically a platform for the podcast to work, but railnatter.com actually now exists. Also supported by Ella. Thanks, Ella. Patreon, Discord, and PayPal. Patreon.com/Gareth Dennis is where you can go to support me to make these sorts of things continue to happen. There you get teasers, you get treats, and in fact you get potentially even more treats, as I'm about to tell everyone in the next slide. Ooh, exciting. The Discord server is where all this stuff continues to be discussed. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord. There's been a little bit of a gentle spring clean where I've tidied up a few of the channels recently. Keep throwing stuff on the Discord suggestions channel, by the way, for things to change and merge together, because I do want to tidy up a little bit. I like the diversity, and I like the fact that there's a decent, fair spread of technical channels. I don't think I want to get rid of any more of those now. I think you can merge to the point where people don't know what they are. I need to write some descriptions so people know what each one is for, but we're getting there. I think it's a very healthy little server. There's God knows how many people there now. Wait a minute. I can find out in just 2 seconds by doing this. Members. 542 members in the Discord server. That's not bad, is it? And then you can chuck pennies at me through PayPal if you so fancy it. What else? Goodies. Yes, look at these. Merch is on its way. There is Railnatter merch at long last. Why on earth I didn't do this before, I don't know. It's because I saw Nodrog had done some via Maskettes. Big shout out to Maskettes. These. So these are going to be the first two types of merch that you're going to be able to get. There's going to be the Railnatter Colton Junction face mask. Because for me, I'm still wearing face mask. I got sent a load by LNER. Thanks LNER for sending. Oh, you can't see these. Wait a minute. LNER sent me a load of face masks. Thanks, LNER. Also, I've put the other one over there. There's a nice one that had a zoomers that I posted earlier. Yes, face masks. But there's going to be now rail natter face masks, so that's good fun. And here they are. And also, the rail natter mug, the currently official rail natter mug, which is this mug a hashtag gadget ban? It seems suitable. Other suggestions being made by the Patreon people. So the Patreon people have the benefit of being able to propose the merch they get to buy, and possibly maybe a discount as well, because I'm working on that with Maskettes. By which I mean probably what will happen is I'll speak to Maskettes, and the cut of the merch that would otherwise... Anyway, I'm going to work it out, basically, that if you're a Patreon supporter, you'll get there are additional goodies for you. Goodies. That should be fun. What else? There should be... I've got the interviews for this that I need to merge into a single episode, which I'm going to, and it's going to be the first of the Not Just Railways episodes, where we're going to take a look at the Siemens E-Highway. So I'll kind of go through the technical side of things. It's a very short video. It's like a super short video, so don't expect big things. But the main thing it'll have is it'll have the interviews with the experts. It'll have the interview with the technical lead from Siemens, and the chap who's in charge of the project, Jan from Region Gävleborg. So that should be interesting. It'll cover some of the ground we've done now, So that should hopefully be interesting. If I edit the damn thing together, it might come after the holiday, because I desperately need to edit together one of the rail natter pre-records that for the holiday that's coming up, which I'll talk about next week. Next week's episode. It's the second half, part 2 of our page turn through the UK's transport decarbonisation plan. We're going to sink our teeth into the really nitty-gritty bits, because there are some things about municipal transport in there that we've not gone through. So we're going to go through that in some detail. I think we're on page 88 or something, weren't we, of like 200. But some of that will fall. We kind of whiz through some of the bits of it. I'll try and go a bit quicker, but we always, it's always worthwhile getting sinking into the detail of these things. I don't mind splitting into 2 episodes. I think it was worth splitting into 2. So now then, what else? I don't think there's much more for me to say other than make my large sweaty face appear. Thanks everyone. That was fun. What else is going on? Which website will these be available on? They'll be available. They'll be linked through here and through various places, but they will be on the Maskettes website, which is, wait for it, Maskettes UK. There we go. Transport inspired apparel. Here it is. Love this. Love it. Look at this. It's glorious. This is where I mean they do great. This is where I got my regional railways mask from. That you'll see me wearing out and about. Anyway, I've just linked it in the thing. People are hinting. Look at those. Look at this. Fine folks at fine folks at Maskett. Now let's have a look. Have they got? Where's Nodrog? Because Nodrog's got his. Wait a minute. Let me bring this over here. Let's go no face, and then we press F11. Here's the Maskett's website. Here is the Maskett's website. Here it is. There's the Nodrog shop. Officially licensed TfL merchandise, the Maskett scarves, and essentially what will happen is I think we'll get a little section like this, a little rail natter section, which is nice, isn't it? Little rail natter section. Go Northeast, look, have a thing. It's great. It's a proper little following. Anyway, yeah. So big shout out to Maskettes. I didn't expect to be doing a Maskettes plug this episode, but it's happening anyway. Big love to Maskettes. A lot of time for Maskettes. There we go. So. I've linked a load of things in the chat, so hopefully when I've said there's a thing linked in the chat, it's easy for people watching this video after the fact to go into the live chat and find those links. The merch isn't for sale quite yet. I'll announce when it'll go on the Discord server when it does go up. They're just wanting to send a couple of tests to just make sure I'm happy with how they look, but it's pretty much there. Lots of people saying shut up and take my money now. I'll announce it exactly when it happens, and I'll possibly be wearing one of the masks to plug it. Oh, anyway, I'm going to shut up now and leave you all in peace and quiet, you lovely lot. An hour and 20. Whoops, that got a bit longer than usual. But it was nice. It's nice to have have some nice Q&A session. It did end up being quite as Q&A as I expected. I need to stop having so many slides. I always like to prep stuff, Warning: may spontaneously talk about pacers. Yeah, make all of the Patreon people. You can make your suggestions for what the masks should and mugs should say, particularly the masks, in the Discord server. Right. Everyone, you've been... Oh, wrong arm. Huh, I need that arm to control it. It's fine. I can hold it temporarily and deal with a minor ache. It's worth it, everyone. It's worth it. You're all lovely. Cheerio! Cheerio, everyone! Cheerio!